Welcome, Bronco Nation, to my review for Boise State versus UT Martin. Now, I'll address the elephant in the room to start with here. Obviously not my usual recording space. It's because I am on the road this week. I'm going up for the Boise State versus UT Martin game. I will be in attendance. I am going to be wearing this shirt. I'll be at the tailgate, so come and find me. I am so excited. Make sure that you come and find me at the tailgates. I can't wait to meet as many Boise State fellow fans as I can while I'm up there. I don't manage to be able to get with my job. I don't manage to be able to get up to Idaho often, so I am super excited for this opportunity to go and watch Boise State live versus UT Martin this Saturday, September 14th, 2 p.m. Mountain Central Time, also on FS1. Now, the second thing is you might notice my voice is off a little bit. That's because I've been exposed to some black mold. So I'm not sick. I'm not contagious, anything like that. I'm just getting over a little bit of a black mold exposure here. So today we'll be having our best Beth Mowins impressions for anyone who's ever had to suffer through one of her broadcasts today. It'll be a little bit like that, but hopefully not quite as bad. So let's get right into reviewing this game here. Boise State versus UT Martin. Boise State 1-1 so far. UT Martin also 1-1. Boise State favored this matchup 97.4%. There's no Vegas line for this. Vegas isn't providing lines for FBS matchups. So UT Martin, obviously an FCS team that did pretty well last year. 10-3, made it to the FCS playoffs, second place fell out in the second round of the playoffs there. So there is a little bit of serious history here between Boise State and UT Martin. They have met one time before, 2013, a 63-14 win for Boise State. A big win for Boise State there, and let's hope that we can replicate that today. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at some key players for both these teams. We're going to look at some keys to the game, summary as well as a score prediction, and see if we can look at Boise State getting to a big win. Hopefully, again, this is the season, the home opener for Boise State, first home game of the season for the Boise State Broncos. I'm so excited for it because I'm going to be there, but I'm excited overall just to see Boise State be able to play in front of their fans. I think that's going to be a big boost for a program that desperately needs it. We'll talk about that later on as well. So let's get into some key players here for Boise State and UT Martin. So first off, for Boise State, one of my keys actually talks about some key players anyway, so I'm just going to give one key player for Boise State. And I think this is the biggest key player anyway. It's Hank Bachmeier. Hank Bachmeier has got to show something in this game. He has had the slowest start of any Boise State quarterback I've ever seen in the first two games. He has 20 of 35 for only 200 yards. 2 games, only 200 yards. And one of those games was against New Mexico. If he'd come out of New Mexico with only 200 yards passing, I'd have said that was maybe a little disappointing. But he didn't even do that. 200 yards in 2 games. That's less than that's 100 yards per game, and that's it. So 200 yards in 2 games. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. A big part of the reason that yardage total is so low, 57.1% completion percentage. So this, you don't get easier than an FCS team. UT Martin, not a bad FCS team, but still an FCS opponent with FCS level players. So you don't get better matchup as far as defense goes, or an easier matchup that is for Boise State this whole season than you will against UT Martin. So something needs to click. Something needs to change. A lot of that, I think, is also on Tim Plow. We'll talk about that later. But the chemistry between the two, between Hank Bachmeier, who's pulling the trigger, and Tim Plow, who's calling the shots, it has to click here because Boise State fans, they need to see something out of their star quarterback here to give them hope that this season has a chance of being something special for Boise State Broncos still. All right, key players for UT Martin. This is they're actually a little bit impressive on offense. I haven't watched any UT Martin games. I think the only UT Martin game I've ever watched was that 2013 beatdown by Boise State. But they have done well offensively. 1-1, like I said, 1 win against the FCS team, 1 loss against the FCS team. But they've done pretty well through the air. 661 yards passing by their quarterback, Dresser Wynn. 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception. And that'll be a big key because if there's what you could maybe call weakness of this defense, it is through the passing game. Against those secondaries, that Oregon State exposed it. New Mexico had opportunities, was able to expose one for a long touchdown. And if they had a better quarterback, better wide receivers, they would have been able to expose some more. So the fact that Dresser Wynn, the quarterback here for UT Martin, comes in already with over 600 yards in 2 games. That's a pretty impressive total if you were going over for 3 games. It's only 2 games, 661 yards passing. He can get it done through the air. That might be something that they start looking at to target Boise State defensively. That's going to be a big key for UT Martin and for Boise State is can they shut down this star quarterback here for UT Martin. They're not just through the air, though. Their running back, Zach Wallace, has 215 yards rushing, 5.8 yards per carry, and 4 touchdowns. Between Dresser Wynn and Zach Wallace, that's all. The two of them are all the points that UT Martin's been able to get 4 touchdowns for Zach Wallace, 6 touchdowns for Dressel Wynn, and that's 10 touchdowns overall for UT Martin so far. So those are their 2 biggest players offensively as far as guys that are able to get it done here for UT Martin. Now, they also have a wide receiver who's been eating up the yardage and been a big part of the passing game here for UT Martin, a big emphasis here. Colton Dowell, 6'3", 215 pounds, so a big guy, a big target there. 17 receptions for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, 15.2 yard average per reception. So Boise State defensively is going to be challenged a little bit in that secondary. Here's a chance for them to step up, to prove some things before they move on to some tougher challenges against other quarterbacks, FBS quarterbacks down the road. So Boise State secondary is going to be tested a little bit in this one. I have faith that they're going to be able to step up. I have no doubt that they're going to be able to step up in this one, but they might be tested a little bit early to see if they have the depth needed to counter this UT Martin passing attack. All right, let's talk about some keys to the game for Boise State. So first one here, find your playmakers. And these are going to be some guys that were great last season, and we really haven't seen them explode onto the scene this year. And then there's a couple of guys in here that we've seen and we need to see more of. So the first guy kind of fits that first category. Tynell Hopper, tight end here for Boise State, led all tight ends in receptions last season. 7 receptions, 132 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, had an amazing long touchdown reception versus Colorado State. Of all the returning players with receiving yards on the team, he was 4th on the team as far as returning players for Boise State. Hasn't caught a pass this year, hasn't been targeted, has barely been on the field at all. They're using him as primarily a blocking tight end. Now, Tim Plow said he wanted to emphasize Riley Smith, and I agree that emphasizing Riley Smith is good. A player who had a great 2020 season, dropped off the map a little bit in 2021, had some opportunities. They weren't on the same page with Hank Bachmeier, some overthrows by Bachmeier there, but didn't really have he was under 100 yards receiving, and he was actually 3rd out of the tight ends for Boise State last season. So really kind of fell off the map a little bit. He's been emphasized a lot this year. He's definitely one of the key targets for Boise State, but he's not the only playmaker. Boise State doesn't need to just emphasize one tight end, and I think emphasizing the tight ends more overall would help Hank Bachmeier. Get those tight ends out on some short passes. Use your playmakers, your guys who can get yards after carry, which these tight ends are big. Tynell Hopper, definitely a guy who can get yards after carry. Easy completions for a quarterback who's needing to get in rhythm. I don't know why Tim Plow isn't emphasizing the tight ends more, especially with a wide receiver room which has questions on it after losing 3 veterans from last season. I thought this was going to be the year of the tight ends, and it's been the year of the tight end, Riley Smith, but not all 3. So Raftel for sure needs to get into this, but Tynell Hopper, he's one of the biggest missing impact players at all, and it is head-scratching that he hasn't been a bigger part of this offense so far. Second on me is going to be someone we've seen already. He has some good opportunities. Obviously, I think last game was trying to reestablish Hank Bachmeier, but we shouldn't drop off the map altogether. Just because Hank Bachmeier is your quarterback going forward, and Tim Plow has made that clear, not necessarily that Hank Bachmeier has shown that he is able to carry that mantle. Like I said, only 200 yards passing so far. But obviously, your 4-year star quarterback, you want him to do well. You want him to get into rhythm. So I understood emphasizing him last game, giving him all the plays. But you can't let Taylor Green drop off the map. Taylor Green is a quarterback who demands to be in the game, similar to what Montel Kozart was. And that was a combo there. Brett Rippon struggling to start the season, brought Montel Kozart in, was able to supplement. You saw both of them on the field at times, or not on the field at the same time, but both of them throughout the game. Intermix, heavy mixing of both of them. Obviously, you had your main quarterback. Brett Rippon was always your guy, but you found ways to use Montel Kozart in the passing game and on the run. And on the run is something that Taylor Green can definitely do. This, I think, is an element where we need to see more of. I wish we'd seen it more last year when we had Jack Sears. I understand there were some injury things there, and I understand it was the first year for Tim Plow, so there were some issues maybe with the game chemistry as far as mixing him in. But Taylor Green is a player that demands to be in the game more. We used him one time last game on an option, headed off to the running back, and that was it. He needs to be worked into the scheme this year. Maybe not in this game. Maybe this is another game where you get Hank Bachmeier established, you let him figure some things out, and then you move on. But at some point, we need to see Taylor Green again because he is a player who demands to be a part of this offense. Definitely through the ground, on the ground game, but I think he also offers something as well through the air. All right, now we're going to look at some wide receivers, okay? So the wide receiver, and the part of this is just that the passing game has been struggling overall, but we haven't seen Cutter at all this whole season. No receptions for Cutter. I mean, he's been on the field, but no receptions for Cutter. Last year, he was 3rd of all players coming back. Now, I know Cutter isn't, your NFL caliber, your typical NFL caliber wide receiver. I know that he's not your most explosive guy, but he's definitely a player that runs good routes. He's a player that can get you yards down the field. And he's a player who's very dependable. I didn't see much, or if any, drops from on Cutter last season. I think he needs to be part of this offense. The short and mid-range passing game has been something that is missing. I think Cutter's excellent in that role. Cutter set 14 receptions for 160 yards and a touchdown last year, none so far through 2 games. Cutter needs to be a part of this offense moving forward, especially when you've got his father on the sideline as an offensive analyst. I mean, there's some chemistry here. There's some ways to mix Cutter into the offense, and we need to figure some ways out going forward. Now, the biggest missing piece, and this is mind-boggling to me, because everybody said this was going to be the guy. This was going to be the guy that Boise State was going to be focusing on pretty much every single play. He was going to be the leader. He was going to step up, and he's a guy that demands it. I mean, offensively, from what we saw last season, this is a guy who can change games. And we had barely seen him at all. Stefan Cobbs. He is last on the team in receiving yards. So he's technically tied for last, but last on the team right now. 4 receptions for 39 yards. That's it. Boise State has a quarterback who is struggling to throw the ball right now, especially against the deep pass, which is not being very effective. Stefan Cobbs is a perfect slot receiver. This is a guy that you can get out on short passes, and he will make moves and get you yardage downfield. I mean, he's your main punt returner, for goodness sake. There it is. There's a cough. This is a guy who is able to get you yards. If you give him something short, he can get you something downfield, and we've barely seen him at all. Why aren't we emphasizing him more in the slot game? Why aren't we emphasizing more in the mid-range game? Why isn't Stefan Cobbs becoming the focal point that everybody thought he would be? Because he was the second leading receiver last year for Boise State, right there behind Khalil Shakir. This is a guy who can definitely change the game. Why isn't he a bigger part of the offense? That's probably the biggest question mark overall. If you're going to fight a playmaker, that's a guy that this is the other guys I name. A little bit of gems in the rough. A little bit of guys that are maybe a little bit underrated. Stefan Cobbs is not. Stefan Cobbs has a massive highlight around him. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody expects him to be out there, and he's not becoming a key part of this offense. And you could say, well, maybe everybody knows he's the focal point, so they're shutting him down. New Mexico doesn't shut people down, okay? Maybe you can make the argument against Oregon State, but Boise State is not drawing up the plays to get him involved. Khalil Shakir, now I'm not saying Stefan Cobbs is Khalil Shakir, but Boise State's always had a great wide receiver who's the focal point. They've still been able to make plays. 4 receptions in 2 games, that's it. And this is a healthy wide receiver. I'm like, Khalil Shakir hurt last season, had still more plays than that in 2 games. So Stefan Cobbs needs to become a bigger part of this offense. I will mention the defense, a little bit of an offensive-focused video, but I will quickly mention one player who has got to be more a part of this defense. The defense, I thought, has played well overall, but they've struggled in the secondary, especially against the deep pass. Well, a player who we saw play really well last season, I thought he played well in coverage against the deep ball, Tyreke Buffa. 3 picks last season, of course, the memorable pick 6 against UCF. Has barely been on the field at all, and Boise State's cornerbacks are struggling there. I mean, Kaniho has really been struggling against the deep ball. You look at most of the deep balls given up, most of them against Kaniho, especially against that Oregon State offense. So Tyreke Buffa, he's a guy who's making plays in practice. I mean, Ron Counts was posting some videos of him making plays in practice. He's a guy who made plays last year. Why isn't Tyreke Buffa a bigger part of this defense? So find your playmakers, mostly offensively, but even some guys on defense that have the ability to step up, we haven't seen so far this year. All right. Find your normal offense. That's your key number 2. And what I mean by that is Tim Plow had some great calls last game. Really, he had 2 great calls last game. He had a great misdirection, all the wide receivers flowing to the right, run Halani out of the backfield on a screen pass, easy touchdown. Had another amazing call to Latrell Caples where Boise State faked the end around for the running back coming to the left, faked the toss to him, at the same time as Latrell Caples came by underneath on the end around to the right, and they pitched it, and it looked like it was a pitch to the running back, and instead it was a pitch forward to Latrell Caples, who ran it in for a touchdown. Amazing misdirection, great play call. And I think Tim Plow has a good offensive mind when he's looking at specific situations and he's drawing it up on his board. I think he has a good offensive analyst mind. I think if he was on the sideline as a guy who was designing play calls for specific situations and he was handing them to the main guy, whoever that was, and they were saying, all right, we'll institute this now. We'll use this for the Statue of Liberty to win the game. That kind of level of, all right, we're going to use this in a specific situation. And most of his key plays, most of his best calls, even going back to last season, in some great ones against Colorado State and some misdirection plays, were in the red zone. That's where you see Tim Plow flourish because he is great at designing play calls for specific situations. What he has not shown the ability to do so far, and I don't know if he has it, and this is a major issue for a guy who's not an offensive analyst, who is your offensive coordinator, is to be able to call routine play calls on the fly in between the 20s. He has not shown the ability to go out there consistently without having drawn up plays and pre-gamed drives to go out there and react to the game environment and say, okay, their defense just shut down that play. This is what they're showing on the field. Let's change this up to a sweep to the right now. Let's run this. He hasn't shown the ability to do that. The running game is mostly unimaginative, mostly runs up the middle. A couple of wide receiver sweeps. I wish we'd see more of those. A couple wide receiver sweeps here and there. And last game, Boise State was able to have success in the running game by just basically running New Mexico down because they were depleted. But that's not going to work later in the season against some good teams when you start getting to the San Diego States, the Fresno States, some guys that have depth there in the defensive area. So Boise State is mostly just running up the middle and not finding success there. Offensive line not being able to create holes up the middle. The defense knows the ball's coming up the middle 90% of the time, so they're just crashing inside. And then deep passes, and that's it. You're not seeing a lot of creative short passing game, complex route trees. There was literally the play that I said in the review video, the play that Hank Bachmeier threw the interception on, there was only two guys running routes. The player he tried to force the ball into to double coverage, and another guy who basically ran a little dig route, about a 15-yard dig route, and stopped and wasn't really moving. He was covered, but he wasn't really running that 100%. That was a design play. You're going to one guy. He's not giving Hank Bachmeier first, second, third, fourth, come back to the first. Maybe you have your outlet receiver options. He's not giving him that complex route tree. So Tim Plow here needs to find a way to not just draw up plays in certain situations, because like I said, that's great if that's your job. But that's not the job of an offensive coordinator. That's part of the job, but that is not the job of an offensive coordinator. The job of the offensive coordinator is to coordinate the offense to have success throughout the game, from the 1 yard line if you're backed up in the end zone all the way down to the red zone. And Tim Plow, I think this is a prove-it year. We are running out of time for Boise State to have games to clean up and to experiment to find that ability. But this is really a kind of a prove-it year for Tim Plow to show that he can do that. Because so far, what we've seen is a brilliant offensive mind for drawing up specific plays. And I think that's the complexity of Tim Plow, because he has these amazing plays and everybody goes, wow, that was really good. Where's that all game? Well, it's because he got into a specific situation where he was able to put in his pre-designed perfect play. But he doesn't have or hasn't shown the ability to use those throughout the game in a way that reacts to the defense on the fly. Third key here, I know this video is going a little bit long, but I think there's a lot to analyze here as far as the offense. Third key here, find offensive identity. We kind of already talked about that a little bit with finding that routine offense, but this is more than that. Find what you want to be. Tim Plow, he mixes things up game to game. Sometimes you'll see a game where it's all pass heavy, another game where it's all run heavy, and it's not really necessarily reacting to the defense because they're not necessarily more successful against those defenses. Boise State needs to find an identity on offense. Now, I'm not saying that if you see a defense that specifically got a weakness in one thing, you don't try to go after that. You should. But Boise State's got to find something that they can call routinely, going back to that second key, that you know they're going to be able to have success in. Boise State needs to decide if they want to be a balanced team, if they want to be an even mix of the run and the pass, which Boise State has been in the past. If that's the case, Boise State needs better run plays, and they need better pass plays, and they need to use those to set the others up. What Boise State's doing right now, it's almost a paint-by-number scheme. All right, they're going to run it up the middle. Cool. All right, they're going to throw it deep. Okay, there's third down. They're going to throw a screen pass short of the third down for some reason. They did that so many times. They're like 7 passes short of the third down, or 5 or 7 passes short of the third down. It made no sense to me. So, and then it's it. And then we're going to punt it away. You got to use the run to set up the pass. You got to use the outside run to spread the defense, to give you opportunities in the middle, in the run game as well, but also the passing game up the middle, because now you're spreading your defenders to the outside of the field. And now there's opportunities maybe to your tight ends up middle to do a little button hook, and then you can throw it to them, and then they're able to make some plays down the field. That was so successful, the 2006 era teams, the Derek Schumann. Or you have your middle passing game that draws the players into the middle of the field, and then you can open up opportunities on the outside. Or you use the screen pass to suck defenders up the field so then you can throw it deep. Or you use the draw play. Boise State, I don't think you ran a draw play this year. I didn't see very many last year. You use the draw play as everybody's going deep because you've been throwing it deep so many times, then you head it off to running back, and now that's forcing your defenders to not necessarily run all the way back with the wide receivers. You have to keep some guys in the middle of the field and keep it short. So Boise State needs to do a better job of setting up either one. Right now, it doesn't seem like what's being called on the run game is being called with a mindset for what's being called in the passing game. It's like they're completely different parts that don't connect. So if we're going to be a balanced attacking team, we have to run a balanced offense. That doesn't mean just splitting up 50-50. It means using each side of the ball to the passing game and the run game to set each other up. If we're going to be a run-heavy team, Boise State needs to do a much better job running the ball. They need to have a much better job on the offensive line. Maybe you need to go a little bit heavier, use a few more tight ends. I've been emphasizing tight ends a lot because we have great tight ends. Maybe use a few more tight ends on the field, and you need to be more creative in the run game. You need to not just run it up the middle. I don't know if the run game is something that Tim Plow knows how to use, because he was very pass heavy when he was at UC Davis, and we haven't really seen him be able to use creativity in the run game. So we've got to find a way to be more creative in the run game, period. But if you want to be run heavy, you got to be more creative in the run game. Or you want to be pass heavy. And honestly, I said this last year, this is Tim Plow's bread and butter. This is what he did when he was coaching at the FCS level. He was a pass heavy team, and you can have success at the FBS level through the pass heavy attacks. I mean, Washington State did it very well for many years, and they're trying to put that into place at Mississippi State now, and not necessarily having the same success because it's SEC and different players and different offense they're trying to work with. But you can have success with the pass heavy attack. But if that's the case, if you're going to be a pass heavy team, you got to commit to that. And you got to use your tight ends more. You got to use your running backs more, and you've got to use the short mid-pass screen game to your slot receivers. You've got to stop just trying to throw it deep every play and try to use all of the field that you have available to you. So Boise State needs to figure out one of these. Obviously, as Boise State fans, I think we would prefer to see the balanced attack and a little bit more creativity. But if Tim Plow can't do that, he's got to play to his strengths as well as playing to the teams. I mean, that's part of being an offensive coordinator. You can't just come in and call something that you don't know how to call. If he's a pass-heavy guy, Boise State has the weapons for that. I mean, they have running backs that are great in the receiving game. Ashley Jennings had a one-handed catch. Kalani has been great in the receiving game in his career. Boise State has a lot of fast wide receivers. You know, Cables and Cobbs are great guys at the slot position. They have some great guys on the outside. Cole Wright, guy we haven't seen before, had a great deep reception last game. Bowens, he's great in the deep pass. Cutter is great in the mid-range pass. Boise State has the weapons to be pass-heavy if they want to be, but you have to commit to that. So Boise State has to find an identity. They have to find their key playmakers to get these guys in the offense that is flagging, and they need them. They need to find their normal offense, find something that is more creative between the 20s, and then they have to find their identity, find out what they want to be. UT Martin, UTEP, those are great games to find that, but those are your last chances before you hit the wall, and I mean you hit the wall, because San Diego State is just the start of a brutal stretch. So whatever Boise State is going to be doing late in the season, they need to figure that out now. So summarizing all of this, like I said, this is your last chance, one of your last chances. They're running out. You got 2 more games. That's it. So Boise State has to figure some things out. They also need, this is your home opener. Your fans need to see something. Boise State is trying to reinvent themselves here. They're trying to reestablish themselves. They're trying to build up the faith of the fan base, to pump them up, to hype up Boise, Idaho, a fast, rapid-growing city. But if your incoming fans from other teams, from all the people coming from California and Oregon, wherever they're coming from, they already have fan bases that they're attached to. They need something to connect to. Otherwise, you're going to be one of the fastest-growing cities in America and have a college that's not getting any support. So Boise State, as part of their plan, as part of this huge Jeremiah Dickey plan to expand and build the stadium and to build the rest of athletic facilities, requires something that captures the attention. We talk about capturing the attention of the nation. I think right now Boise State just needs to be able to capture the attention of Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho is big enough. I mean, they're not the biggest city out there, obviously, but they're big enough to support the stadium that is in there. I mean, 30,000 plus stadium capacity is not massive, and Boise State can't even pack that out. So Boise State needs to do something to capture these fans, and they need to show something today. More than that, though, I think these players also need the fans. As well as the fans needing to energize and to vibe off the players do that more so off the fans. Boise State has struggled on the road so far. This is their first game coming home in front of their home crowd, in front of hopefully a packed-out, roaring, raucous Boise State Stadium, a Bronco Stadium, or Albertson Stadium, but Bronco Stadium here, for a chance for Boise State fans to lift this team up. We need to be loud. We need to be in attendance. We need to be part of this team, the 12th man out there. And I think the team might be able to use that to reinvent themselves this season, to re-energize, and to move forward in the right direction. So Boise State, this is a chance. UT Martin, FCS opponent, definitely going to be outmatched in this one. definitely has opportunity to hit you if you're not looking for it. So Boise State defense needs to step up, and the offense needs to step up as well. But this is a chance for Boise State to get back on track against a FCS team in their home opener. Boise State, I think, is going to win this one. I think that's probably out of the question. That it's probably beyond questioning that they would win this game. But it's how are they going to win this? You don't want this to be a nail-biter, drag-it-out, even two-possession game for Boise State, because that is not going to energize your fan base, and it's also not going to inspire confidence within the team and in the team, both exterior and interior there, from the fan base and from the team itself. So Boise State needs to win this game handily. They need to be explosive. They need to show that they are able to be creative. I know usually you would keep some things hidden in these smaller games, just try to run a little bit more of a normal offense, which honestly, that's what I'm calling for. Run your routine offense, find some consistency on offense, but I think they would try to maybe keep it really dumbed down playbook so they're not showing a lot of things later on to some bigger teams, but you can't do that in this game. Boise State hasn't been able to get their offense going, period, so far. They need to run this like this is Alabama that they're playing, like this is San Diego State that they're going to play in a few weeks. They need to run this offense so they can prove that they can do it. They need to learn that they can do it in this game. They need to develop and shake off the rust, because UTEP is not going to be a guaranteed win. I mean, there should be an easy win, but also it's going to be harder than UT Martin. Boise State needs to find themselves in this game, because otherwise this is going to be a long season for Boise State and for Boise State fans. So I am predicting that Boise State's better in this one. I'm not going to say they're going to fix all the problems in this matchup. I'm not even going to say they're going to be able to hit all the keys that I identified in this matchup. But I do think that Boise State's going to be better in this one. I think that being at your home stadium is going to do something for this team. I think coming up against their easiest opponent so far will do something for this team, be able to get into a little bit more of a rhythm here for Hank Bachmeier. This is a chance to come home, to play in the best stadium in the country. Boise State has a chance to come in here and open up their season the right way here at home. Home opener, open up their stadium, open up protecting the blue. This is a chance for Boise State to do that in a big way. I'm not going to say it's going to be a 63-14 or 70-plus win like Boise State's been able to do against FCS teams in the past. But I do think they're going to do well. I think that it may be a little bit of struggle early on. I think UT Martin might even expose some things in the secondary. But I think in the end, Boise State's going to figure out some things, and the crowd will get them there. I think Boise State's going to win this one in a good way, 42-17. Boise State 42, UT Martin 17. That's my final analysis for Boise State. Thanks so much for watching this video. Thanks for dealing with my voice. Hopefully, I'm on the upward trend. I definitely am upward, and not being there this week is definitely going to help. So I'm definitely on the upward trend here, so you won't be having to listen to too much Beth Mowens for that much longer. Thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure if you see me come up, I want to get photos. If I get photos of anybody and you're okay with it, I'll put those photos on my next video as well. If you don't, then that's fine. I'll just put them on the Bronco Nation Facebook page, as long as you're okay with that. But I am excited to be able to get back to Boise. It's my favorite city in the country. I am so pumped to be able to go back to Boise to watch this game, the home opener, new television or our new stadium television there for Boise State. I believe it's the one in the north end zone, the one that they end up putting in. So the first part of Jeremiah Dickey's big stadium improvements plans. I cannot wait to be there. I'll be pumped. I'll be excited. And as always, I'll be yelling, go!